Modern electric cars tend to drive much the same way, whether you're a luxury brand or you're not. That's why today I'm comparing the Nissan Ariya against the Genesis Electrified GV70. Because even though there's a price delta between these two of roughly 14 grand, the base price on this is just slightly more than where this tops out. And when you watch this video, you'll see just what I mean in terms of battery capacity, range, overall refinement, space. These two are much more comparable than you'd find if they were powered by gasoline. So let's get to it. Both cars are brand new for 2023. The Genesis is based on a platform that was designed to handle both gas and electric powertrains. The Nissan is a dedicated battery electric platform that will spawn many other models across the entire Nissan range. But let's talk some numbers, because more money doesn't mean a better performing EV. I can't go on without mentioning range and battery size. The Genesis, slightly smaller battery, but the range in this Nissan isn't that much larger. As such, their efficiency is rated by the EPA, also not that much of a difference. Check out the combined MPGe. Now look at the power. The Genesis, significantly more there, and with the torque. And there's a boost function on that one that can boost it past the 480 horsepower for 10 brief seconds. It's a fun little party trick. I'll show you that in a bit. But they both have dual electric motors front and rear for all-wheel drive. The Genesis comes one way, the Nissan has a lot of other configurations in the less expensive models. Now, charging times. One clearly wins. The Genesis charges at almost double the speed of that Nissan, and that makes a big difference when you're out on the road, provided you can find a working electric charger. On the steering wheel is a boost button. It actually has a counter, 7 seconds, 6 seconds. For 10 seconds, it goes past 480 horsepower. Kind of like what Porsche does. They have another little boost button. It's like you could pretend you're driving a Formula One car, I guess, if you want to pretend you're Lewis and press the KERS button. I think that's kind of silly. I'm just going to try to press it again. I mean, it's there. I mean, we're going really quickly right now, so this is a quick car. It's small. It feels like it's more nimble than that Ariya, even though they're roughly the same weight. And already the cornering is better. Again, the steering is the steering's not that great. That's the one trade-off here. There's just hardly any feel, and the loading, the weight is just not, I don't think, it's not my preference. Steering can go either way in a car. We can either all complain about it, love it, but usually no two people will ever agree. But in terms of road holding, no doubt this is the better, more composed car. It feels like it's definitely more sucked to the ground. This is the sporty choice. And you can get this car for a few $1,000s over the Nissan's fully loaded price. If you wanted to, $65K, you could get the base version. And this base version does have some decent equipment in it, but it doesn't have all of the nice luxuries that you'd expect from Genesis. Especially all the Genesis models that we review, they're always fully loaded. That tends to be the best value. Here, not so much. At least with this extra price, you're getting a lot more performance. And the interior, especially at speed, does feel quieter than the Ariya. It does. What's also nice is that there is an adjustable brake pedal feel. You can't do that on the fly. You have to be stopped and use the main touchscreen. But it still doesn't feel like the regular brakes in the GV70. So I think Genesis, they're trying to be performance-minded. It clearly is quick. Genesis engineered this version of the GV70 to be quick, and it certainly is. It holds the road, center of gravity is nice and low. But it's still not meant to be a full performance version. I think the GV70, the gas version, that 3.5T that we've tested, look up that review, that one feels like it's meant to be more of a road holding, really almost a BMW M performance level SUV than this one. This is more of a smooth luxury car that just happens to have an extra dose of boost. Ooh. That actually did kick a bit. And when I'm driving, especially over a certain speed and in sport mode, the bolsters will automatically inflate to keep you in place. These seats are nice and snug. They're a bit snugger than the Ariya's. I just wonder what the mission of the GV70 is, because if it's not a full-on performance car and it's not a full-on smooth riding, Lincoln style luxury car of old, it's kind of in the middle. And I wonder, given this high price, does it really fulfill either mission? I don't know. As much fun as this is to drive, I think between the two, I'd pick the Ariya. And if I had to pick a GV70, I most definitely would get the gas version. There we go. There's some of the sport. You can feel the weight, it understeers a bit, but it hangs on and it doesn't cut the power or apply the brakes quite like the Nissan Ariya. So the acceleration is notably better than the Ariya. And so is the brake regen. The GV70, like the G80 that's electrified, has what's called I-pedal mode. And that essentially lets you have one pedal driving. And it has automatic regeneration, so it'll use the adaptive cruise radar sensors to pace a vehicle in front, so it can automatically change how the brake regen is going to be, and you can also use the paddle shifters. Now there's almost nothing, and I'm using the regular brake pedal. A nice firmer bite than the Ariya, but still not very natural feeling. The back roads are where the Genesis and the Nissan differ by a lot, even though they're about the same curb weight. The Genesis is really dancing around. This reveals its heft, more so because it's just not as responsive. Steering, even just the throttle inputs, that's good, don't get me wrong. But the GV70 is tuned from the start to have more performance. This all-wheel drive system will try to reduce motion sickness. So when you get off the throttle, it tries to put more bias on that rear motor to alleviate the dive and pitch that you get from coming off the throttle too quickly. That's pretty nice. It also just tries to balance all the torque and can independently brake all the four wheels when required. So there's some torque vectoring style action going on here, but it's still not tuned to be sporty, say like a Kia EV6. The Genesis GV70 electrified, that isn't even sporty enough, to be honest, in terms of handling. So Kia really is the leader there among the Hyundai group. But between this Nissan and the Genesis, it's clear that that is the chassis that's really more meant for handling. You can handle the Ariya just fine on a twisty road, but it just feels a little bit larger, it really does. Not too fun, really. I think part of the feeling that the Ariya doesn't feel as nimble as the GV70 is just because I can stretch out here. I can have my foot in the center here like I'm in an old Buick or an Oldsmobile. The only thing I don't have is a bench seat. It's kind of nice about dedicated battery electric cars. They can make that floor so wide and so open and low that it just feels way more spacious. The dimensions are really similar on the outside, but inside it just feels so much airier. It truly does to me. That's just how this car feels. And that translates also to the feeling I get behind the wheel. So it doesn't have the same type of road holding, doesn't have the same steering feel. It's good, it's competent. But if you want a more exciting electric car with this many seats, GV70 is a good bet. And if you want to save some more money than the Genesis, I would get a Kia EV6. What I like also is that Nissan doesn't try to make ridiculous fake noises. The Genesis actually has a whole menu full of them. We've turned them off. We don't like really having that distraction. It's fun to please some passengers, maybe for a few minutes. After that, it gets kind of silly. So this Ariya just gets up and goes from the start. It's just a few driving modes. You can't save any of the modes like you can in the Genesis. It certainly doesn't have that car's adaptive dampers with the road preview with the camera, so not as advanced of a drive, at least from a chassis perspective. And accelerating, okay, it's good. Mid-range is really nice. but it's a full second slower to 60 miles an hour if you really care about those things. But be real, 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds, that's quick. And the Ariya can do that all day, it can. The Genesis has Highway Driving Assist 2. That's a semi-automated system. It's got automatic lane changes, but this Ariya in the top trim has Pro Pilot Assist, and they call it 2.0. The 2.0 means that once I hit the button and this turns to blue, it's using the HD map so I can actually put my hands down by my knees. It has an infrared eye tracker just like the Genesis, but this Nissan is using HD maps and all of the other sensors to do hands-free driving like GM and Ford are doing, even before Mercedes-Benz is ready to do it. Now, this is not a perfect system. It cuts in and out, but there's lots of information that it shows right here. It shows all the cars, it's showing the lanes, the curvatures. It's not perfect, and it can't see everything all of the time. To be honest, I don't think they really should be allowed, just because they're really works in progress. But if you're paying attention as it's designed, it is impressive, and the Genesis can't do it. The Genesis is quieter at highway speeds, and as it should be, it costs almost 15 grand more. And befitting that, it also handles a bit better, but the Ariya, like, yeah, see, despite that being Skyline GTR derived all-wheel drive in electric form, it's pretty conservative. It really just brake the wheel and cut the power. I just like to have a little bit more fun. And the brakes, while they're a good size, also not a ton of feel. So this is not a sporty EV. A nice family EV, absolutely. We conducted a 100-mile highway test with both cars. Same weather, roughly 70-degree summer days. Here are the numbers. As you can see, they both consumed relatively the same amount of energy from their batteries, and their range really wasn't that off. For other EVs, this can be a problem, but for now, with these two in this type of weather, it was actually pretty consistent and not too far off from their estimates. The electrified GV70 is just as handsome as the gasoline GV70. It's not as sporty as that 3.5T, but what you'll notice is kind of interesting. Solid front grille, looks like it's all diamonds, and there's a hidden charging port. That's a nice little clever feature, especially when you're pulling up to a station. You don't have to worry about what side you're on. In the back, there's no exhaust tips, and in the front and the back, there's those gorgeous lighting, the double bar treatment that looks like no other type of brand on the road. Very unique to Genesis. This one has a more sporty looking exterior than that Ariya. The Ariya is nice, but this one definitely looks like it came from the luxury car aisle. And it's 1.5 inches lower, a ½ inch wider, and it's actually 3 inches longer. That stat surprised me because this car to me visually looks shorter and more compact. But in fact, on the outside, it is not. These 20-inch wheels are unique to the electrified model, and if you step up to this Prestige, you get white brake calipers. Interesting color choice, considering they'll be gray pretty quickly. In the Genesis, you've got 29 cubic feet behind the seats and 57 when folded. Neither of these are that big, they're really more in the compact category. Smaller wheels and tires will always improve your range, but when it comes to higher end SUVs, who doesn't like a bigger wheel? These are 20 inches, just like the Genesis. I think these look even better. They have a nice flush surfacing, they look like they're a saw blade, and they're just wide. Of course, the charging port, not quite as cleverly disguised, it's just here on the right-hand flank. Pretty normal. I really just missed that beautiful design of the Genesis. The Ariya is not quite the elegant form that the GV70 is, but there's a lot of function. And there is some style because this higher roofline allows for more interior space. The polished black front grille is what we've seen on a lot of EVs, so that's not very distinctive, but the LED lights certainly are. They're very hard to miss, not quite like the Genesis. But in the back, there's a nice smoke taillight effect. There is a big wing out the back to aid with aerodynamics, and it cuts on 2 different holes there. I like that. It's a nice looking car. It comes across as a bit generic, but like the new Nissan Rogue, it fits in the family and it wears the company branding pretty well. Cargo space is all about what the manufacturer wants to prioritize. Behind the seats, there's 23 cubic feet. That's several cubic feet less than what the GV70 has. But with those seats folded down, the Ariya has more total cubic feet than the GV70 at 60 cubic feet. While the Genesis goes all white, the Nissan goes dark navy blue. I think it looks pretty nice. And these seats, oh yes, you notice that? The Genesis doesn't do that, and the Genesis also doesn't do that. Motorized things coming every which way. Why? Well, it's a novelty, and the fact that this is styled more like a concept car and that Genesis looks more like a traditional luxury car, those are the two stark differences. And before you think the Nissan looks and feels cheap, you gotta sit in this one. It's got this blue suede cloth all over the dash. Real blue leather that's actually very soft. The Genesis is made of some recycled plastic bottles, not in this Nissan. And this wood trim isn't real, but it's touch capacitive and has backlit buttons on the console and on the dash. Bronze accents, a D-shaped steering wheel, lots of nice polished black plastic that does not feel cheap. It may not be as ornate as the Genesis, but it's very well put together. Gobs of space, that's what you get in the Ariya, because it feels just like a much bigger car than that GV70. The headroom, maybe not so much, but the legroom, this is feeling more like an EQS Mercedes. Watch that review. At $60,000, you're getting a lot of comfort. No, I don't have the side shades, I don't have cooled seats, but these are heated. I've got USB ports, plenty of air vents, and just some nice details. Everything's soft and padded. You could sit back here for a long time. I'm sitting in here and I don't want to eat lunch or do anything in here. It's so white, it's so soft, it looks delicate. Not entirely, because there's some recycled plastic on the seats and a few other areas where they use eco-conscious materials or whatever the fad is these days. The real truth is that this is a really well-crafted interior. It looks special, looks like a boutique type of hotel, and it's in a compact SUV. This central console doesn't move. This interior is more conventional. Really nice looking, but guess what? While this doesn't power, this does. You can take that, Nissan. Score Genesis. Where the Ariya is like an open-air lounge, the GV70 is like a tight little watercraft. I'm feeling a very nautical vibe here with these colors, the central console, the oval display here for the climate controls. It's very different than most cars, and compared to the Ariya, it feels much tighter. It feels more like a sports car, even though it's not. The GV70 has a decent amount of room for a compact SUV. Good legroom, good headroom, not quite as airy feeling as that Ariya, but still separate climate controls, heated seats, and some shades if you really want to get private. The GV70 has a 14.5-inch wide screen. It's so wide that it's a real stretch to get over here. So they let you use a rotary controller and buttons just in case. A lot of tile options. It can be a little confusing, but it's still pretty decent. Would I say it's better than the Nissan? A little clearer, a little more organized, I'll say, but not that much better. The nav is good. It will route to charging stations just like the Nissan Ariya will. All that normal EV stuff about all the percentage and the range left. I mean, it is very important, so you do need to look at it. It isn't just stuff. But besides that, it's functioning like every other Genesis model. Nissan has revamped their infotainment system with new graphics, new tiles. It works so much better than before because you can actually use the entire screen. There's a row of icons over here that you can also swap out. It's very customizable, where everything before felt fixed and it was clunkier to use. For example, the climate control, I can go into the climate. I can also adjust it from the home screen or any other screen here. And I can go down to these touch-sensitive controls in this fake wood. The fake wood looks pretty nice, by the way. And the seats are heated and cooled, will automatically sync with the temperature. A lot of cool stuff here. When you go into the EV mode, Nissan has finally changed the radius map where it was only a circle. It would tell you that you couldn't drive into Long Island Sound or Cape Cod. Well, obviously you can't have electric range out there. Now it's overlaying the actual distance you can travel on the land. So that makes it much easier to find where you need to drive to find the next charging station. The digital instrument panel has a lot of information, especially when you enter full screen. Because this way, you can see full screen maps, which also duplicate what's on the main screen and the head-up display, which is very sharp, so it's pretty much impossible to miss a turn. And when you have ProPilot Assist on, you can see other cars coming in the lane right behind you, road curves, all of that. It makes driving so much easier, and so is adjusting settings. You can see exactly what's being changed. This big screen, yeah, it works really well, and there's more customization than a lot of other cars. The 2023 Nissan Ariya starts at $43,190. The Platinum Plus E-Force we tested with the 20-inch wheels was $62,220 fully loaded. That's a little under where the base Electrified GV70 starts, $65,850. Once you add all the nice tech options and all the special colors, it's $74,350 with destination. But the Genesis also includes 3 years of maintenance, a 5-year, 60,000-mile warranty. That's pretty great, but it's only on sale in 26 states. The Ariya is meant to be nationwide. In this comparison, I have to hand it to the Nissan, because not only does it act like a Nissan in the more affordable way that a mass market car should, at the upper end, it's doing a pretty good impression. No, it's actually doing a decent job as a luxury car. All of the features that this car has, including some technology features like Pro Pilot Assist 2.0, the hands-free system that the Genesis doesn't yet have, this is what's making this car a winner. It's also bigger inside. So much of the value comes from having more space and more options to pick from. The Genesis is just more limited, and the fact that you can't buy it nationwide strikes me as a real problem, not just for Genesis, but for anyone who's interested in a car like this. For more information on both of these EVs, go to CarGurus.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got more comparisons coming up all the time. See you next time.